President, China is very disappointed with the result of today's vote. Guyana, Algeria, and the other E10 members of the Council demonstrated maximum amount of sincerity and constructiveness during the consultation of the draft resolution. The U.S. long use of the veto has dashed the hope of the people of Gaza for survival, pushing them further into darkness and desperation. I said during the Council's debate on Monday that every moment will be recorded in history and will be judged by history. We cannot imagine how the vote today, as well as the Security Council's failure to respond to the Gaza's conflict over the past 13 months, can escape the harsh judgment of history. In the future, when looking back, people will find it hard to believe what happened. When the U.S. cast its first veto on 18 October last year, nearly 3,000 civilians had been killed in Gaza. By the time the U.S. cast its second veto, 17,000 people had been killed as a result of Israeli bombardment. With each veto, the death toll in Gaza continued to rise, with the U.S. exercises on April 18th this year. The death toll in Gaza stood at some 34,000. Now that nearly 44,000 people has been killed in Gaza, yet still did not hesitate to use its veto. 44,000. It is not some cold statistics. It could be a miner, a nursing mother, or a family. The loss of each and every one of them means internal pain for the surviving relatives. People cannot help but to ask, do Palestinian lives mean nothing? Can't the deaths of 44,000 people win even a little bit of sympathy from the United States? How many more people have to die before they wake up from their pretend slumber? In the future, when looking back, people will find it hard to understand what happened. The Security Council is mandated under the UN Charter to shoulder the primary responsibility for maintaining international peace and security. It is incomprehensible why, for the past years or so, the United States has been so insistent in rendering the Council incapable of playing its role, leading to its paralysis. The US claims to be conducting parallel diplomatic efforts and has repeatedly promised that progress would be made soon in the negotiations. It is incomprehensible then why, to date, the so-called diplomatic negotiations has seen no progress. Why is Israel allowed to continue its military operations while consistently putting forth new conditions for negotiations? In the future, when looking back, people will find it inevitable to feel indignant. Israel has flagrantly breached every red line of international humanitarian law, with its actions causing an unprecedented humanitarian disaster. But even as famine is imminent in Gaza, the United States always seems to be able to find a justification to defend Israel. This represents a distortion and selective disregard of the applicable IHL. People keep learning something new they never knew before was possible, and how low one can stoop. No wonder people feel angry. People's indignation also stems from the fact that the continued supply of weapons from the US has become a decisive factor in the war lasting so long, causing so many casualties and so much destruction. President, the US representative earlier called for the release of hostages in their statement. Our position has been very clear from the beginning. All hostages must be released. An immediate and unconditional ceasefire must be established. Both are important factors. There should be no any conditionality. They cannot be linked to each other. Because facts have shown that Israel's military operations in Gaza have long exceeded the scope of rescuing hostages. Insistence on setting a precondition for ceasefire is tantamount to giving the green light to continuing the war and condoning the continued killing. The repeated use of veto by the United States has reduced the authority of the Security Council and international law to an all-time low, but it is never too late to recognize mistakes made and take corrective actions. We call on the U.S. to take its responsibilities as a permanent member of the Council seriously. The U.S. should stop being passive and evasive, stop dragging its feet deliberately. The U.S. should adopt an attitude accountable to history and support the Council in taking all necessary actions to achieve a ceasefire, save lives, and restore peace. And I thank you, President.